What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we are going to talk about my latest upgrades to my old 2001 Trek 4900, which is adding the Surly corner bars and the spin tri-spoke wheels, vintage carbon wheels. So basically, I've made a whole video about this bike and my history with it. I bought it new. I believe it was 2001 when I bought it, and I rode it around for years and years, and it was just my bike. I never really thought about other bikes or anything about that. Rode it all original forever. And then as I got more and more into cycling and met other friends who rode a lot, I started to get myself other bikes, and I discovered that I really loved riding vintage bikes and drop bar bikes, and then I started tinkering with those, and then that led me into loving what is now called the gravel bike. This bike ended up just sitting more and more, and I wasn't really riding it until I basically converted it into my winter bike just by putting on a set of 45 North Gravdell studded tires. So I really only ride this bike in the winter when the weather was really bad. There was snow on the ground and all that. Then about a month ago, I was going down to Columbus to meet a friend that I met through the channel, Ben, aka Pudgy Pedal Pusher. And while I was down there, he presented me with the gift of these tri-spoke spin wheels. They're so cool. I love that kind of quirky, unique look of them. He knew that I would love them because on the live streams I had talked about how I really like those old 4-spoke spin energy wheels, and these are kind of the competition to those at the time. He gave me these. He said he realized that they had kind of climbed in value, but he didn't want to see them sit on some collector's shelf. He wanted to see them actually be ridden. So what happened to me is I started to put these on the bike, put them on a live stream and all that kind of stuff. And then I realized I don't want to just ride this bike in the winter. I want to get out there now with this setup. I want to see these wheels on the road. And then it must have been almost at the exact same time that Russ from Pathless Pedaled made his video about these Surly corner bars. I saw those and, the light bulb went off, and I'm like, oh, the, gravel bike, mountain bike to gravel bike conversion. And that's kind of what I started to think about doing. Talked about it a little bit, looked into some other bar options, but my local bike shop, my friends over at Dirty River Bicycle Works, got a few of these in stock. I was in there getting something else and I couldn't walk away without them, so I picked these up, installed them on the stream, and so now I've got this new setup going on here. So the reason the Surly corner bars piqued my interest is I'd always liked the idea of converting this bike into a drop bar bike, just because drop bars are what I like now, but I didn't want to figure out how I'd have to change the stem and how much drop bars would change the handling. Then I'd have to try and find a group set that worked because, obviously this is a flat bar bike with flat bar levers and all that kind of stuff. And I just don't know enough about it. I never went through the research. So yeah, these really interested me. Seeing that video by Russ made me think, these are what I want. Put this together over a couple live streams. If you want to watch those, I could also link those below. But there really isn't that much to it. These bars do come with a shim. For this old mountain bike though, they go on perfectly fine without it. And so the bars went on, and I originally thought that I would be putting the shifters and maybe even the levers on the flat part and using them up here and then trying to use them from down here. But I realized with these old Shimano style, where they actually go is on these nubbins, as I call them, which would have been kind of like your hoods. Originally I thought I would want that hood hand position, but then through the live stream and people chatting with me, they were saying no, put them on the top. I noticed Russ put his brake lever on the bottom. With how close mine fit together, I didn't really see a reason to do that. And I also put them kind of flush with the way the drops flare out. I've only ridden this bike down the alley barefoot just 20 minutes ago, but we have thunderstorms coming through. So that might need to be tweaked a little bit, but it seemed to feel right, and the shifting feels right. And you shift from basically the drop bar position, kind of how you would ride at the front of drops on a gravel bike when you're hitting the gnarly stuff. And I could also see still riding with my hand up in this position, just kind of loosely when you're not on stuff that's that crazy. But yeah, this really seems to be the position. The other side is a little different for me. This is a 3x8 setup, I believe. It's 3 in the front for sure. But I had replaced the Shimano shifter last winter because if you know these old shifters, they kind of get gunked up over time, and those little tines have a hard time shifting. Well, they're not hard to take apart and clean out, but I had done it so many times and it just started to go bad faster and faster, and it was just a pain. So I just put this little Sunrace friction shifter on here, with it just being a winter bike, and I'm mostly in the middle ring. So with this, it's still sitting in the same position, but it's obviously on top here. That takes a little more reaching and a little more effort to shift from this position, but again, I'm not too worried about it because I'm not shifting that big ring nearly as much, and I still have the rapid fire shifting on the back. I chose then to wrap the bars completely just like drop bars, because thinking that this is the position in the front of the hood you'd ride in, I wanted tape there and in that corner, and I didn't want my grips, because I did kind of look at where my grips would end, and it would have put them in an uncomfortable spot for my hand. I threw some bar ends also on top of the nubbins here, so obviously water and stuff's not going in there, plus it just looks better than having open holes. I did have to run all the new cables. This being an older bike, it's simple, mechanical cable, so not really that big of a deal, but they do, they kind of shoot way out front, almost like a vintage 10-speed. You have them, curving way up here. To get like a nice arc in them and have the bars still spin to either side, I did really kind of run a lot of cable around the front. It's not the cleanest look, but you always had cable shooting off, these kind of old mountain bikes. I want to get this thing out on the road to see what does it feel like, how much did the handling get changed, is it a gravel bike now, is it a drop bar mountain bike, is it something in between? Unfortunately, we are having crazy thunderstorms out right now, so the full test ride will have to be tomorrow. All right, it's the next day and I am ready to ride. As you can see, I'm in all my cycling clothes, which are exactly the same as my regular clothes, except I do have my chrome shoes on because there's going to be a lot of puddles out there on the gravel and the gnarly stuff I'm going to go hit. So these do work with some water resistance, and when it's this hot, a shower could form at any time, so I have a bunch of plastic bags because I'm going to bring my cameras and stuff just in case, but I will see you out on the road.
Toda la gente que tiene el corazón latinoamericano, ¡arriba!
Well, the test ride is being cut short because I just ran into a big track hoe clearing this gravel road. And also, I am not one who complains about the heat, but this is miserable. Yeah, and again, everyone says it, but if it was just the heat or just the humidity, it'd be one thing. Right now, we're getting so much of both. I actually stopped to turn around and I did not feel that well. So we'll go back and talk about this experience in the studio. So I've stopped here in the shade to adjust the bars. I had them pointed a little too high. I thought I set that thing on the ground to feel how they would feel, but in the basement, I'm not really paying that much attention. But first observations, I'm really digging them. I'm using the every hand position, even the top nubbin position, which I didn't think would work. It doesn't work quite as well with my left hand because I have that weird cheap little shifter there, which is going to make me reconsider using that shifter on this bike, because I do like that. It gives you that top of the hoods feeling. But then I was also using them from the bottom, like that front of the drop position, at the back, which is more of a cruisy position, and then on the tops when I'm just riding on the road. So overall, just like one little quick ride. I think I only did like 2 miles on the gravel before I saw that backhoe. I'm definitely loving them. The only other thing that I noticed is I would probably want them higher. Obviously my steer is already cut because this was set up before, but if you're doing it to a bike like this, my bars are definitely lower than they would be on my regular gravel bike. Yeah, so changing those bar positions made a huge difference. It was much more comfortable on the way back. The thing that's kind of blowing my mind is how I don't even have to think when I ride this. Like, I thought there'd be an adjustment, but putting my hands on the tops is normal, putting them on the little nubs and shifting and finding the brakes is normal. From the hoods, or like what would be, not the hoods, the front of the drop position, I'm shifting, I'm braking. I haven't thought about it one bit. Everything has just felt completely natural. So is this bike a gravel bike now? I guess that just depends on your definition of what a gravel bike is. Originally, you know, I considered them what my rally is, a bike that is a little more stable than a cross bike, you know, lower bottom bracket, longer wheelbase, slacker head tube, and a little more clearance for wider tires. But now you have bikes that go all the way up to what could just be considered a drop bar mountain bike. The main thing is it doesn't actually matter what you want to call this bike. I just had a blast on it. I'm definitely going to keep riding it. Want to try it on the mountain bike trails, other trails. So, you know, same as I always say, just ride whatever is fun for you and whatever works for your riding style. And ride lots of different stuff if you can. All right, I will see you in the next one.